Hi, my name's Dave Gregory. I'm one of the ministers at Croxley Green Baptist Church, which is on the north edge of London, and I'm Baptist Union President for the coming year. I'm just recording this short podcast to introduce the theme that I've taken this year: Divine Windows, Glimpses of God through life, the universe, and everything. I heard it said recently that the millennial generation have never known a world without mobile phones. Well, that's not true of me. I remember us getting our first landline fitted when I was a child. But what is true is I've never known a world without rockets and space travel. In the year that I was born, Yuri Gagarin became the first human being to ever orbit the planet in the spacecraft Vostok 1. Whether he said it while he was in orbit, or whether he got back down to earth at a press conference, he's reported to have said there was no God. He did not see God as he orbited the earth. Contrast that to 7 years later, when the astronauts Borman, Lovell and Anders were the first human beings to leave Earth orbit and go around the moon and come back to Earth safely. As they travelled over the lunar surface on Christmas Eve of 1968, as they looked at the moon, the desolation of the moon, as they looked at the earth rising above the moon's horizon, they read the words from the opening chapter of Genesis. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The desolation of the moon, the wonder of what Carl Sagan later would call the pale blue dot rising above the lunar horizon in the darkness of space, made them think of the wondrous world and the wondrous God who had made it. I wonder, when it comes to science, as people of faith and followers of Jesus, how we respond. Do we say, well, there's no God there? Do we close the curtains on this area of our world which shapes so much of our living and our lives? Well, that's the message we often get from the scientists in the media who tell us that science says there is no God. Or is there a possibility that actually science might be a divine window through which we might glimpse God, through the wonder of what it shows us? There are lots of divine windows in our world, in our lives. Jesus, for Christians, is the fullest divine window that God has given us. In Jesus, we catch a glimpse of the being and the character and the purpose of God in his life and death and resurrection. We see God revealing the depths of his love to draw us from brokenness into the freedom of his new life. And throughout church history, music and art have moved people deeply to catch a deeper sense of who God is. In our weekly worship and in our prayer times, they too are moments when we encounter God in fresh and new ways. But as St. Paul says, we live and move and have our being in God. And maybe just in our ordinary lives, our everyday lives, there are moments when we can encounter God, but perhaps we miss them. Perhaps we encounter God in our meetings with people, those that we know well and those that we have met for the first time. Maybe those we meet only once in our lives. Maybe there is a moment when we can catch something of who God is and how God is at work in the world. And maybe as they meet us and see us, they catch a glimpse of God in us. In our offices, in our schools, in our neighbourhoods, in the supermarket, as we go around our weekly, daily business. There too, perhaps there are moments when we can encounter God in fresh ways. And in science, maybe in science, the science which is so often close to us by those who tell us that it says there is no God, close to us because we don't understand the language, close to us because perhaps we fear what it says to us about faith. Maybe in the wonder of creation that science reveals, maybe even there's a chance for us to catch a glimpse of God, a divine window to gaze on the wonder and beauty of the one who made the world in splendour and majesty. I hope during the coming year that I'll be able to help you to understand a little bit more that science is one of those divine windows which God gives us, through which we can catch a glimpse of his being, his purpose, of his creative power and his love for us. And perhaps too you'll be able to discover something of the divine windows which are special to your life, through which you might discover the same things. At the end of the podcast, there are a few questions for you to ponder and wonder about that perhaps will start you on those journeys. And I hope that all of us will begin to grow and know that we can be divine windows through which others we meet in life can catch a glimpse of God and perhaps be inspired to seek and follow that God for themselves.